Hi guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. And for all of you new subscribers, I know I have a few of you there. Welcome. If this is the first video you're seeing from me, I hope this is like a nice little intro to my channel. This is very, I guess, common to what got my channel started. So I really wanted to do like a little return to these kinds of videos because I have been a little bit out of the swing of YouTube lately, and I wanted to just, I don't know, get back to my roots, to my OG videos, and I really hope you guys are enjoying them. This is a bit of a funny one actually, because I thought it would be a cool idea to read some sort of common misconceptions about Italy, some common things that people, I don't know, foreigners might have an idea about or a perspective on. They might think a certain way about Italians, and I'm going to read them out and then I'm going to say from my perspective if they're true or not. So if it's like a truth or if it's a myth or a misconception. So yeah, I really hope this can be, I don't know, a little bit of fun, a little bit of a lighthearted video, something that could be of interest to some of you guys if you're moving to Italy, or even if you're just curious about Italian culture and Italians in general. This could be some interesting video for you, I hope. So without further ado, let's just get straight into the first misconception or idea about Italy. So the first one is that they always talk with their hands, that they're always talking with hand gestures and things like this. And this is definitely true. And I was listening to this TED talk the other day, and it was talking about, I can't remember what the name of the TED talk was, but it was why we're attracted to certain people or why certain TED talks were better than others. And this lady was talking about how the most popular TED talks were the ones where people were talking with their hands, and they were like matching what they were saying with their hand gestures so that people could sort of relate to what they were saying in more than one way. So for example, like if someone was talking about a big idea and they also used hand gestures like this, talking about their big idea, it sort of, I mean, it matched with the audience's idea of what they were talking about. So it was more clear in the audience's mind that the person on stage knew what they were talking about and they knew what idea that they wanted to get across. Because it was obvious that they were talking about something that they knew a lot about, because they could concentrate on more than one thing at one time. So everything was sort of in sync. And I sort of relate this to Italians as well, and why, you know, foreign people or people in general find Italians so attractive, and why they're seen as like very friendly and easy to approach. And I thought about this idea with relation to, I guess, my perception of Italians, and you know, why people are so attracted to them. The reason why people are so drawn to them, and why, you know, they can be so convincing or so good with people, is that they do have this ability to line up what they're saying with their hand gestures, and it's very, I mean, everything's very in sync and everything sort of makes sense in the way that they explain things. So I thought that was really interesting little point to note with that, just with Italians and hand gestures, and why people are so attracted in general to Italians, because I've always wondered that, and I've always thought about that. But yes, I would say this is very true. It's very common for Italians to talk with their hands, and to sort of, yeah, match up what they're saying with hand gestures. It's very common. But one thing that I wanted to talk about is that I think there's a misconception from foreigners that this hand gesture means like delicious or very good or something. I know they have this emoji, the emoji that's like someone going like this, and a lot of people use it like on Instagram and things like that for things that are like, they want to say something is really good, or like the food is really good. But actually this is like something that Italians use if they're saying like che cazzo fai, or like che vuoi, like what do you want, or I mean, it's sort of expressed in a bad way. So maybe this is a misconception, like this actually means like che vuoi, che cazzo vuoi. The second one I'm going to talk about is that people think this about Italians, that every meal is 5 hours long. I read this and I sort of thought, I can understand why people think this, because Italians have the mentality of like, you know, taking things slow and really enjoying your meal. And I think obviously like 5 hours, that's a bit exaggerated, but I would say, I think I spoke about this also in my previous video, that especially like even on their lunch breaks at work, for example, Italians value very much like taking a break and having your lunch and really enjoying it, as opposed to like rushing, eating at your desk and continuing to work kind of thing. I mean, especially the way that Italian meals are structured. They have like the primo piatto, secondo piatto, and then like the dolci, digestivi, dessert, things like that. So I can understand that. I mean, in a formal setting, Italian meals are very long, and especially if there's like events or things like this, weddings, like a formal lunch, the lunch does go for a really long time. And my boyfriend had like a couple of lunches where he planned at home, and you know, you do the aperitivo with the spritz, and then you have like antipasti, so you have little snacks, like kind of an entree, and then yes, the primo, secondo, maybe salad, fruit, dolci, digestivi, caffè. It's very like this. It's very, they have a very structured way of eating. So in formal settings, meals can go for 5 hours or even more than 5 hours. So I would say yes, in formal settings, it is true. On an everyday kind of basis, I would say like 1 hour. If you go out for lunch, for example, like for work, sometimes, well, a lot of the time actually we go out for lunch during the day if we're in the office, and we'll have like the lunch, so I don't know, a pasta or whatever you order, and then you sit, you eat your lunch, and then all the time, always, you'll have the cafe after you finish your lunch. And so yeah, lunch is usually like 1 hour, maybe a little bit over an hour. It's very calm. It's a very time of the day where people pausa pranzo. It's very important for Italians in Italian culture to have that break and really relax for a second. So yeah, half true, I would say. The third one, and it sort of, I guess, leads on from my last point about meals going for 5 hours. The third misconception is that Italians are lazy. Now, I can neither confirm or deny, but I would say first of all, in general, I would say no. I mean, the experience that I've had with Italians at work, for example, like in the industry that I'm in, they're definitely not lazy, but I would say, I mean, they can be. I think this is like, in any culture, maybe you have these kinds of things. I think in any culture you can have these kinds of things, of course. Like in some industries, maybe some people are very lazy, but it sort of leads on to I wanted to make a point related to my previous one about meals going for a long time, is that the point is that Italians really like to enjoy living. They like to enjoy their meal, their life. They want to have like a good sort of work-life balance, and maybe that's where this sort of misconception can come from. Of course, like in like public offices and things like that, people can be, I would say, maybe not wanting to work so much. I mean, it can be a bit like this. I mean, in Italy, especially the bureaucratic processes can be very slow because, you know, they want to, I don't know, they have other more important things maybe to deal with, and for example with like residency requests and things like that can take a really long time because, you know, they work 3 hours per day or whatever in public offices, and sometimes it takes a long time to get things done, so it can label Italians as lazy. So I mean, it can be the case sometimes, but of course you can't say that for a whole population. So maybe half true, half false. The next one is that Italians always say mamma mia. I would say, I mean, I would say this is true. They say, oh mamma mia. Yeah, I would say it's pretty true. Enough said. The next one is that all Italians are dark and hairy. I think this is a myth. I would say in general, from what I've noticed, Italians from the south are they have more like the dark features, you know, the dark hair, dark eyes and things like that, more of like the Mediterranean look. Whereas in the north, you see more like, I guess, people with lighter features, blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes, and more like, yeah, light features, more sort of, I guess because it's closer to, I don't know why this is the case, closer to Germany, Austria. I actually don't know why this is really the case, but it is something that I've noticed, is that a lot of Italians more from the north have like more lighter features as opposed to those from the south who have darker features. But no, I wouldn't say all Italians are dark and hairy. That's definitely like a misconception. Next is that they eat pasta every day. I would say this is more or less true. Yes, I mean, like, especially, well, the Italians that I know, they always have pasta. I mean, every day. If they don't eat it for lunch, they eat it for dinner. So I would say, yeah, it's pretty true. So the next one is that they don't drink cappuccinos after midday, and I would say this is definitely true. Italians sort of have an unwritten rule that cappuccinos are just sort of like the breakfast drink. So Italians will often have their cappuccino in the mornings, and then after that they won't have cappuccino again. So if you're someone who really likes sort of milky coffees, I would say to go for a macchiato. I really like a macchiato in the morning. I always get one at work when I first get to work. It's my little routine because we have like a little coffee machine at work where it dispenses like whatever you want, macchiato, espresso, cappuccino, whatever you want. But it's really, really not common for Italians to have cappuccino after midday or after breakfast. So you would opt for yeah, like an espresso after lunch. Yeah, I go for a macchiato in the morning, and then after lunch I have an espresso. It's like a little ritual. So yeah, it's very uncommon for Italians to ever have a cappuccino after midday. I've only ever experienced one Italian who did have a cappuccino after midday, but she was like quite an international Italian. She like lived in Germany for a few years, and she came back, and now she's like the only Italian that I've ever met who thinks it's like acceptable to have cappuccino after midday. So yeah, it's very un-Italian, I would say, to drink like a milky coffee after lunch. The next one is that Italians are mama's boys. And I mean, okay, from my experience, I would say this is definitely true. As much as they don't want to admit it, they really are mama's boys at heart. My boyfriend, he's always on the phone to his mum every day. She will call him. I mean, granted, she is usually the one who calls him, but he's always, I mean, it's nice because he speaks so nicely of his mum, and they have such a close relationship. And it's very, I think, very common as well, because Italians, also another thing to note is that Italians often live at home for, you know, until they're like 25, 26, you know, unless they come to another city to study, and then they move out of home for that reason. A lot of Italians are always, you know, usually living at home until they finish university, or until they get married. So it's very common for, also for the relationship between the mother and son, or the parents and the children in general, to be very close, because oftentimes not only do they value family a lot, but they're also a lot of the time reliant financially on their parents until an older age. I mean, I guess compared to in Australia, maybe like my relationship, for example, with my parents is a little bit different just because of like cultural reasons. It's not to say that I'm not close with my parents or my family, but it's just a different kind of relationship. Like I'll catch up with them maybe once, you know, like we always have the Facebook group chat, for example, but I'm not like on the phone to them every day saying, you know, like recounting every tiny thing in my day. We'll usually have just like a big catch up, say once every few weeks, or something like that, and that's fine for us. Whereas with Italians, usually it's like constant communication every day. They're on the phone to their parents, like if they're not living with them. So it's just a sort of a different way of going about things. And yeah, I would say like definitely the Italian guys usually are mama's boys. The next one I'm going to talk about is that Italians are very loud. Now I would say this is kind of half true and half false, because I think, I mean, I guess this is kind of like anyone in the sense that when you first meet them, they can be, depending on where they're from in Italy, I would say this differs a lot between the north and the south in terms of if you meet people for the first time, sort of the way that they communicate with you and how, sort of how they approach new people. I would say definitely people in the north are a bit more reserved, a bit more standoffish when they first meet people, and it takes a little bit of a longer time to get to know them, and to feel like you're sort of on a friendly basis with them. Whereas I feel like if you go to places like Napoli or like the south of Italy, people are a lot more open and a lot more sort of warm when you first meet them. It's just like a different cultural thing. I've spoken about this before in previous videos. I think I made a whole dedicated video on the differences between the north and the south of Italy. So go and have a watch of that one if you're interested to understand more about that. But I would say it depends a lot on where they're from. I would say once you get to know Italians, they can be very loud and very outspoken. But then, yeah, I mean, it's kind of depends on wherever you are, really. Because I think, I mean, also I could say the same thing about Australians, that some people are super loud and some people aren't. So I think, I mean, this obviously is going to vary person to person, but I would say Italians in general are quite like outspoken, and it's very common for them to speak their mind and sort of like exaggerate things, I would say. I don't know, in Australia, for example, if I was talking with my friends, like telling a story, for example, about something that happened to me, you know, you kind of just like tell the story, but like, I don't know if this is a language thing or just how Italians speak to each other in general, but it always seems like very exaggerated, very sort of over the top, everything's a big deal, you know, like it's just like this, and I'll be sitting there like, I don't understand what the big deal is here, guys, like calm down. So I don't know, it depends, firstly where you are in Italy, secondly I guess the context or even your background, because what you might consider to be loud might be like completely normal for you, or maybe you come from an area or a group of friends who are super quiet and reserved, and so Italians on the contrary would seem like very loud and very sort of outgoing, outspoken from your own personal standards. So I guess it depends on, yeah, it depends on your opinion and what you sort of consider to be loud, I guess. But yeah, I would say, yeah, half true. Yeah, I would say it's pretty true in general, overall. And then the last one, this is a bit of a funny one because I guess I've spoken a lot about like how Italians are very protective of their food, very protective of their cuisine and things like that, of Italian food. They're very, when they want to eat just Italian food in general, I would say. I mean, I've tried to cook a lot of times for my boyfriend, I don't know, different cuisines, because in Australia, and one question that I often get asked in Italy is like, what is Australian food? Like, what's the typical Australian food that you eat every day in Australia? And I don't know what to say to people, because I would say in Australia, we don't have like a specific meal or dish that's like super Australian. Like you don't see Australian restaurants when you go to Italy or Europe, you know, like it's not really like that, how we would see Italian restaurants or Spanish tapas restaurants or Chinese restaurant, sushi. Like it's really not like that in Australia. I feel like it's a bit of a mix of everything. So in Australia, we're often experimenting with different cuisines and like cooking Asian food and Italian food and Mexican food and all of these kinds of things. So I feel like people in Australia are very experimental with the foods that they eat and the foods that they sort of like to eat. Whereas in Italy, if I were to cook something with like a lot of spices or different flavors that aren't the simple Italian flavors that, for example, my boyfriend is used to, he takes like a little while to warm up to it. He doesn't like things with a lot of spice. They prefer things to be like very simple. I mean, even with salads, the dressing is usually like olive oil and salt e basta. Or they'll have like maybe balsamic, they might add balsamic and have like, I mean, they eat bread, for example, plain with nothing on it. Whereas like in Australia, we're very big on like flavors and sauces, and we put sauce on everything and like salt and la la la. So it's very different, I mean, in terms of yeah, in terms of that kind of thing, I would say. But yeah, in terms of like Italians being not so willing to try your food or like the food from your place, I would say it kind of is true. That's where I'm going to end today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was a little bit interesting and entertaining for you to see sort of like a foreigner's perspective in Italy, on misconceptions about Italy. Just give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe for new videos every single week, or almost every single week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in my next one. Bye.